Hello, what's happening, everybody? How are we doing? How are we doing? I'm Dr. Thunder, and this is Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. And yes, today's show is part two. It is part two. And we're looking at Myers-Briggs. And one second here. We are looking at part two of the Myers-Briggs Personality Types Explained. Part one we did on Ike's channel last week. Make sure you go and check that out. But this is going to be a good show. I mean, we had a lot of fun last week, and I think we discovered some things. I think I discovered I was INTP. I think that's what I am. And I was thinking I might have been INTJ, but looks like I might be INTP. And so anyhow, that was interesting. But you know, these personality sort of profiles, personality types, it's one of these sort of tools that we can use unlocking our ability to know ourselves better, know thyself, right? And also learn more about other folks. And I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And on your upward path, on your productivity journey, skills and resources, your acquisition of skills and resources, it's going to be necessary that not only that you know yourself, but that you know as much as possible about the people that you work with, about the people that are literally tied to your destiny. Right? You're going to, what does it say? If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you got to go together. And so anyhow, very much looking forward to this discussion. And we've got Kaizo's going to join in with us for this discussion, as he did for our last discussion. Episode 1 on Ike's channel. And so, without any further ado, Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder, Myers-Briggs Personality Test, Personality Types Explained, Part 2. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion
Disturbing.
is advised.
Disturbing.
All right. What's happening, man?
What is up? What is up? What is up? I think I'm awake. I think I'm ready to go. Ready to get ish done. How about yourself?
I am ready to get ish done. And all kinds of stuff going on simultaneously and everything. And we have Kaizo's in the back there. We'll bring him up when we get over to the video to look at the video. Where were we at with the video? Were we like at point nine or where
Yeah.
were we at?
So good thing. Now, we went through the first eight personalities, but here's what we figured out while we were going through the eight personalities is that we figured out that without understanding the functions, it doesn't really have much. It's hard to get what exactly they mean with these vague descriptions that they're given, right? Oh, this personality is this type, and you're like, how is this different from that type? So first, let me kind of, for the interest of the audience here, just gonna give a quick recap regarding the four dichotomies that we started out with, right? So you have introverted, extroverted, right? And that has to
Mhm.
do with how you recharge, how you regain your energy, right? And then you have whether you are a sensor or intuitive. And the easiest way to describe that is your relationship with abstraction, right? Intuitives are okay with abstraction. They tend to be more abstract, generally speaking. And then you have whether you're a feeler or a thinker. That's one of the easiest ones to be able to judge, along with introversion and extroversion, I think. Introversion, extroversion, and then feeler versus thinker, also easy to judge. And then you have perceiver versus judger, a complicated one as well. So there's like the four dichotomies from which these different personalities are built, right? So a ENFJ is an extroverted, intuitive, feeler, judger, and INTP intuitive, introverted, intuitive, that is, thinker, perceiver type. And then they started going through the personalities. And what I was thinking is before we start going through the video, going through the personalities again, maybe we should introduce the functions. What do you think? And then perhaps we can even start from the first personality again. And I know that this might then take us to the next video, or next
That's all
week,
right.
but yeah, I think it makes sense because if we just watch the rest of the video looking at these personalities, I don't think that it'll have much. I think looking into the functions, and then when we go back to the beginning again and the ENTJ, and then say, okay, well, what exactly or is the function stack of the ENTJ? Then it'll make more sense as opposed to just the vague description that is given by the types and whatnot. Um, so shout out to the chat. Please go ahead and click that like button. Okay, share the stream, super chats can keep flowing in or start flowing in and keep flowing in through the evening, ladies and gentlemen. Getting ish done is what we
so
do over here.
so
I'm sorry.
since we're not going to do the
Go ahead.
video right now, I'm going to just pull Kaizo up here. Let's see here. Oops, I got to unlock that. Okay, here we go.
I got money in the bank. Girl, what you drank?
Uh, let's see here. All right, and then let's bring him in here. There he is. And let me find my what's the name here. You're in the show, and it's all big and everything. It's all bloated. All right. Can you hear?
Can you
Are you there,
say
Kaizo?
it's Dusty Guy?
Yeah, it's pretty dusty.
I know he moved. Well, he's moving today in a different apartment, whatnot.
Oh, I see. Oh, he just disappeared. That's all right. Well, here,
Okay.
let's see what we got.
Yeah, yeah. He'll come in when he comes in, but let's have a conversation here about these functions, right, and see if we can kind of unearth and kind of find a grounding for them. I just mentioned the dichotomies of like introvert, extrovert, feeler, thinker, and such, right? Now you have sensing, you have thinking, you have intuition, okay, and you have um, feel. Well, you have sensing, feeling, intuition, and for some reason one escapes me right now. But I'm gonna start out with the fact that there's an
Judging.
introverted and extroverted version of. Yeah, but the judging is not one of that's not one of the functions. But it'll come to me. It'll come to me.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
It's like 1:30, and I decided to take a little nap here. Shout out to Accra. Decided to take a little nap before I anyways, you have intuition, you have feeling, you have thinking, and you have sensing. Okay,
Mm,
intuition, feeling, thinking, and sensing. And you have introverted and extroverted versions of all of these. So when it comes to feeling, there's introverted feeling and extroverted feeling. Now,
mm.
extroverted feeling is something that we have talked about on this channel quite a bit, right? And extroverted feeling has to do with the feeling amongst people. It's almost like it's not the okay. What is your sense of extroverted feeling, Doctor Thunder? Why? And or maybe you're dealing with Kaiser there and his
Oh no, no,
BS,
no.
but
He just muted himself. Um, so,
you sound horrible.
um, it- uh, these extroverts. Um, so yeah, extroverted feeling. It's that sort of so sort of the person that what is it what is it their feelings on their sleeve or whatever or on their shoulder or what is that?
Talk
Um,
about people wearing their feelings on their sleeves.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah.
However, you could have a feeler that's an introverted feeler that also is a feeler, and it may seem to have their feelings on their sleeves, but it's going to be a very internal kind of their feelings. It's gonna be more narcissistic. Well, let me not muddy the waters, but go ahead. Yes, they're a feeler for this is a feeling function, right? So it is about feelings as opposed to thinking, right? But go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So more about feeling than about thinking. Sort of more value on feelings than on thoughts or ideas.
And it's
Um,
about the group harmony. It's about harmony
that's
of the group. It's about the feeling of the group, right?
that's
So
right. So it's like
extroverted feelers, a lot of times,
they're
they're the
group
kinds of people
thinkers.
whom, yes, there you go. They're group thinkers, other than other than the fact that it's not actually thinking. Okay?
Right.
It's not actually thinking. This
They're mob.
function is about keeping harmony.
What are they? They're the what is it? The uh, what is it? The mob. What is it? The mob ethic. What is that?
The mob mentality is that what you're?
Right. Yeah. They're that.
Yeah, guys, he's sorting his stuff out, and hopefully he sorts it out, and he'll come back. But yeah, yeah. So the this extroverted feeling one, I think, is a good place to start to kind of grab the attention to be like, well, what's extroverted feeling versus introverted feeling? You see, people who are extroverted feeling dominant. Now, we all have the extroverted feeling function, right? In terms of making judgments, right? We can all sense when there's discord in the group or when there's more harmony in the group, or we can all flow with the vibes, and we all maybe find it somewhat important. But that we're talking about that main function, somebody whom is a high extroverted feeler like a ESFJ, where their first function is going to be extroverted feeling, they are maximally concerned with that thing. And these are the types of people that might tell you that they don't even necessarily know who they are sometimes. Okay. Or they don't necessarily know what these are kind of people who say, oh, I give, or they do so much for others that they don't even know what they believe, what they think, and somehow it might breed resentment at some point. But introverted feeling, Dr. Thunder, how can you conceptualize the opposite of extroverted feeling, but it's still feeling, but it's an introverted feeling? FI, for example, and this is something that, for example, well, let me not give the example yet. Let me ask you, if we've talked about extroverted feeling, but we're still talking about feeling, and then we say introverted feeling, how does that strike you? What do you think that would be?
Is it like the people that cry themselves to sleep?
Introverted feeling is gonna be somebody that is all about authenticity, right? So again, we're talking about feeling. This is not some kind of when you're like, oh, I know the truth and I've thought through the truth. I know the mathematical equation. No, that's thinking. This is somebody about themselves and their values and their feeling about themselves, their sense
Mm.
of themselves. It's about authenticity, right? I'm the
Oh,
authentic one. Um,
so
so
someone
does
fessed
that
up
does
to
that make
being somebody just fessed up to being an introverted feeler.
ah interesting?
Yeah,
Shout out
very
to
inter-
you. But so for my introverted feeling is one of the things that actually I have, and it's in third position, and it does control me quite a bit. But introverted feeling is that whole thing about authenticity, right? And it's not so much about other people, but it's not thinking. It's about this identity that is not thinking. It's about this perception that is not thinking, but it's very concerned with being in an individual, as opposed to extroverted feeling that will be concerned about the group feelings of the group, right?
mm.
Um, so that's one kind of dichotomy. You have the sensing part, extroverted sensing and introverted sensing. Okay, introverted thinking and extroverted thinking. Let's talk about that one. Okay, sensing is quite clear when we start talking about when we start watching the video and looking at the personalities and seeing how they stack. But if I were to tell you introverted thinking versus extroverted thinking, this is like a tricky one. Does anything come to mind? Like, wow, what the hell does that even mean? What do you think?
So is an introverted thinker a person that they have to work everything out in their own head before they're willing to share, and then an extroverted one that sort of thinks out loud, thinks using other people, thinks like bouncing ideas off of
Yeah.
other people, and that's how they get creative and all that kind of stuff.
They will come across that way. In fact, um, yes, behaviorally, yes. But introverted thinking is thinking that doesn't have anything to do with content. In other words, it's pure logic. It's A equals A and non-contradictory. There's nothing. A could be anything, right? So one way to think about it is pure logic, right, versus the logic of things. Okay, and they're quite different. Now, the logic of things might be governed by pure logic, but let me give you an example. Pure logic, as we know, these are just the rules of how you can go study Aristotle and his logic stuff, right? We all know what logic is: non-contradiction, and so non-contradiction being the main thing from which most of everything else stems. But
Identity, non
the logic,
contradiction, you know,
yeah, exactly.
and excluded
The
middle.
logic, um, it's it's like mathematics, yeah. Those kind of transitory whatever, I forget the names, but it's basically mathematical. There is
Right.
no necessary content. Okay, this is this is your specialty, Dr. Thunder, right? Thinking logically. extroverted thinking is, let's say there is a logic to how you arrange your cabinet. There is a logic to how you arrange your restaurant, right? And you can you so it's logical, it's rational, but there's content to it. It's about something. It is there is something about which this thinking is necessarily about. So it's kind of outward looking, and it looks at the world. It looks at what makes sense rationally out there in the world, and it's saying, yes, that looks right. Yes, this should come before that, as opposed to just a pure logical type of thinking, which doesn't have to look out in the world. You could literally close your eyes and think about this identity and non-contradiction, as opposed to saying, well, what is the logic of the transportation industry? Does that make sense to you, Dr. Thunder, or do you think it'll make sense to the audience, or are we getting somewhere with this introverted thinking, which is logic, versus extroverted thinking, which is about the logic of something out there in the world?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of uh now what did you peg me as? Am I extroverted thinker or
No,
introvert?
you're an introverted thinker. It's pure logic. It's not necessarily about content and information, and here are the 52 states of the X and the blah blah blah. Right? It's not about
Right.
some external content. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so just put a button on describe the extroverted thinker again. The sorts of things. So
So So there will be the extroverted thinker is looking outside in the world and seeing logic of things, the logic of a wheel, the logic of of leverage in terms of the the lever and the fulcrum, the logic of the transportation system, the logic of a
do,
particular kind of industry.
so they
Go ahead.
require they require the medium to see the logic or to test their logic.
That is, and even if they're doing, even if they're going to explain, or if they're doing introverted think, but what might be logical introverted thinking, they're going to be doing it a lot through analogies. They're going to be using, like, oh, this is like this thing, right? Because there
Mm-hmm.
is a correlation between the logic of how things work versus just pure logic, right? So it's not like they're completely divorced, but one is contentless, internal, forever, mathematical, as opposed to the other one that you
How's
can
my
actually
time?
observe in the world.
Hmm. We can hear you now.
But say something
Yeah,
again.
so
What the hell?
Yeah, that's much better.
as I was talking about, yeah, the logic of things. So, most people, I would say that they're introverted thinkers, just like me and Dr. Thunder. And actually, this the reason why is because the thinking profiles go with the psychological feeling profile. So if you look at culture, most people are what we call FE, which is extroverted feeling. They're there to maintain the values, rules, and laws of the culture. That tends, no, not tends, always goes with the TI thinkers. So TI actually goes with FE. So meaning most people are A, culturally assimilated, and B, they also have to think in that introverted thinking way to meet the preferences of this sort of larger cultural value system. Meanwhile, you have those who are extroverted thinkers, thinking to get things done. Their thinking is primarily relating to the way systems work as you put them together. A simple example of this, a good way to differentiate this is Newton versus Einstein. Newton comes up with a theory of, he discovers gravity. Then he creates this very, very intense understanding of calculus. And calculus will never get you to the truth, but it will keep trying to get you closer and closer to ways that you can understand volumetrics, you can understand the unknown, right, by using shapes. Meanwhile, Einstein actually tries to create this self contained, very introverted thinking rules to govern gravity. So his gravity theory is more comprehensive, it's more theoretical, and meanwhile, Newton's one is more practical. It's what can I do with this information rather than is this the truest information. So introverted thinking is more about truth. As far as truth can be defined, it's always seeking for the most accurate model. Meanwhile, extroverted thinking, what we call TE, is more considered, or rather more, yeah, it's more interested
It is
in
an
how things work. Sorry,
effective
the effects of
model.
things.
If you talk about a real theory versus effective theory is another way to talk about it, right? The TE person, the extroverted thinker, is looking for an effective theory that, hey, if I just imagine this thing to be this way, right, and I have this kind of mechanism, then it works. It gets me the answer. If, for example, Dr. Thunder, I imagine that the world was, or the stars were fixed on a sphere, okay, that rotate around. That's like an effective theory type thinking, extroverted thinking. Again, it's kind of like an analogy, right? But the stars are not really there in that way. Introverted thinking, again, is about truth, pure logic, contentless, non-analogical per se. Um, is that getting somewhere?
Yeah. And as as you guys are both talking, I was thinking, it seems like an extroverted thinker is like a pragmatist, whereas a
Yeah.
introverted thinker is
Exactly.
more is more principles, like self-contained principle based.
100%. 100%. So, um, your dad, ENTJ, right? ENTJ starts with TE. In other words, that's your first function. Would you say your dad is a pragmatist
My dad's a
or
pragmatist.
or not? Okay, well there you go. So the way he thinks, and obviously he thinks, right? So he's not like a feeling. He's thinking, is rational, but it's not based on these absolute truths or focusing on those things. It's more about the content. Like, okay, what are we trying to do? Okay, since we're trying to do this, then this is the path, right? Yes, I'm violating some principles over here, or it might not be perfectly blah blah blah, but this is the path. Okay, good. I think that one. I think we've gotten that one. So far we've got introverted feeling, extroverted feeling. Whereby we say that extroverted feeling again is about the group, the harmony of the group, keeping the culture together. Introverted feeling is about your own internal identity, right? Your own internal authenticity. Okay. And then we just talk about introverted thinking and extroverted thinking. Now, intuition, okay? Introverted intuition versus extroverted intuition, okay? Now, you and Kaizo be more extroverted intuition types, um, and introverted intuition. Or let me ask if Kaizo can explain what extroverted intuition does versus introverted intuition. The word introverted and extroverted tends to kind of muddy the water in this case, because it makes it seem as though. Anyways, go ahead, Kaiser. What is introverted intuition, and then what is extroverted intuition?
Yes. So with introverted intuition, it's seeking convergence, right? So it's taking all the pieces of information that you've ever read, you've heard, you've idealized in your mind, and then when you are relating it to something else, it converges into a single point. So it starts from the many and tries to be as specific. It's that intuition where people say, like scientists have got this light bulb, kind of coming up in their heads when they've just always had this block. So it takes everything together. Then it's like, oh, okay, this is a path to take. Extroverted intuition is more divergent. It starts from individual small points, then it gets relational with another point, and it keeps building this massive network of ideation. So one is convergent, one is divergent in itself, but they're both analogical, right? They're both trying to reason with all the previous concepts in your mind. One is more expansive. So, for example, I'm an extroverted intuitive. So that means when I see an idea, I get more ideas, and by engaging with people like this conversation now, more ideas will kind of spark some bulb in my mind, and just keeps getting more and more and deeper. Meanwhile, someone like Ike, who's an introverted intuitive, first function, meaning for him, all the ideas like to converge into this very sort of neat path length. as opposed to sort of me more divergent, messy. So yeah, I don't want to use this example, but for me, if you look at my computer, there's like 60 tabs, right? One idea begets another one until it's a whole mess, but they're all connected. Some people are a lot more kind of neat. The intuition doesn't want to just go outward, but rather go inward, find the right point. So let's say if it was a business idea, I'll be trying out 7 or 10 different things, iterations. Meanwhile, I could actually try to figure out the best path to take, as opposed to just engaging in the chaos.
Oh, I think. Okay, good, 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 good. Your internet went haywire there for a second, or maybe it was me. Who knows? But I think we got it. So, Dr. Thunder, introverted thinking, extroverted thinking. Kaizo said convergent versus divergent. Just to pick one kind of example of like introverted thinking. I mean, introverted intuition will be that thing that I'm always obsessed with about like what is the one thing. If you tell me three things, I'm trying to make turn it into one. You give me 17 things, I get annoyed, right? I'm like, whoa. So it's always trying to converge, converge, converge. Even if we start with one idea, rather than go to another idea, I want to drill down into that idea, okay? And in a certain sense, let's not get too abstract because it's like it would be better if I was showing an image. But in a certain sense, they're both kind of doing the same thing, but I rather go inward than outward. I'd rather go into the atom and see the whole universe as opposed to jump from galaxy to galaxy and build this vast network. Does
So
that? And this is
can I
all
give
about
a
our
simple
relationship to
example?
abstraction, right? Go ahead.
Can I give a simple example? So an example is right now, my home fiber hasn't been connected yet, and I was trying to figure out the best sound. Now I did find it, but I found in my mind that there was too much echo. So I tried to go to a smaller room in order to reduce the echo. Yet I was sacrificing the main win, which was a good internet speed. Someone like I could have probably stayed with that functional state rather than trying to interact more with chaos by trying to remove that let's say echo. It's very simple, I think a simple idea of how one is divergent, the other one is more convergent.
Here,
Yeah, I'm
let me
definitely less likely to interact. Go ahead.
let me ask you about this. So they said that Mozart and Charlie Parker is more like Mozart in this way. Uh, they were not tinkerers. They basically just the way that they conceived it was just correct, and when they wrote it down, there was hardly any adjustments. Especially with Mozart, there was like hardly any adjustments to what he wrote down. He wrote it down and it was correct. Okay, that's what he wanted. Beethoven and Coltrane is more like Beethoven. Um, is constantly reinventing things, smudges all over his scores. You know, improving it this way, improving it that way, getting rid of this section, put in this other thing. So his scores did not look immaculate like Mozart's scores did. So in this context, how do you describe the uh, the sort of constantly reinventing and adding to and perfecting and not being satisfied with what's thinking that you can improve it versus the one that just it was correct. Sonny Stitt, I would say, is more like in his process is more like Mozart. You know, um, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think that that example there is a great example that combines a number of functions together, as a matter of fact, and I'd like to see what Kaiser thinks about it. I think this is a very NTP type, either you're ENTP or INTP, that both, number one, the extroverted intuition, trying to branch out, interact with more willing to kind of, you know, see one idea, then see the next, and then go to the next. The introverted, the intuitive might see it the next, but they're not. It's not their preference to go to it. Okay, and then also the P part, where you're willing to again, as I say, reopen the file, while the J type is like it's shut, it's done. Like it's what I'm not it's done, right? So definitely extroverted thinking, NTP type there will describe that kind of Beethoven, rewriting, tinkering, moving around, and a willingness to do that, as opposed to maybe an NTJ type or an NI dominant type, introverted thinking type that goes, drills down, boom, gets this spark of something, like, this kind of spark of insight, and then boom, that's it. Kaizo, does that, what do you think about the Mozart versus Beethoven example?
And I said Charlie Parker
Yeah,
and
And
Coltrane, by
exactly,
the way.
exactly.
I said some brothers in there too.
oh, oh,
Right.
Go keep going.
No, but I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you look at the general difference between the P types and the J types, is that the P is a perceiver by definition. J is a judger by, again, by definition. The perceiver is always looking to see what they've missed. They're actually afraid of missing something more, right? These are the kinds of people that are YOLO, right? They want to go and experience everything, and they're willing to kind of reanalyze the same situation, hoping for a different idea. The judge sees this works enough, and I want to actually make progress. So that's really the main difference between the judge and the perceiver. Now, when you add intuition there to the judge and perceiver, you get, let's say, the difference between someone who is chaotic, they keep rewriting scores and rewriting scores, versus the one who just sits there, contemplates, meditates, almost like just sits down silently while an idea sort of cooks.
it cooks and your internet is cooked, it seems. But we get it. So something came to mind, Dr. Thunder, and I want to ask you, when he talked about the perceiver reanalyzing and not wanting to miss something, and he Kaizo mentioned hoping to come up with something new. Um, is it hoping to come up with something new? But now, you know, I see this in you, for example. But are you hoping to come up with something new, or is it just like I say, like a scientist that likes to just look at things? Are you thinking you're actually going to come up with
Yeah,
something new? Like, haven't you you know
no,
you've seen it 1,000 times, Dr. Thunder? But are you hoping? Oh, well, maybe Kaiser, you can answer for yourself, and then Dr. Thunder can answer for himself.
yeah. So for me, it's not like I'm hoping to come up with something new. It's almost like uh, my mind is programmed towards seeking novelty. It's a program.
Your internet is not helping you, but
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah, this is a little puzzling about me. Okay, so I do have the tendency to want to venture where no one else has ventured, right? Like I'm good with going to other places, and I think that that fits well with me being a jazz musician, right? With all the improvising and with having my own sort of methodology, the way I teach, you know, I think it goes with that. It complements that well, you know. Um, but I also have this thing where, and this almost comes across as more pragmatic. Um, when uh, let's see here, I tend to be unable to. It's not a. Is it a motivation thing? It's not really a motivation thing. I don't see the purpose in composing music unless I've already utilized and recorded um, music that I've previously composed. So I have like a stack of compositions that's been ready to record a project for 15 years, 20 years, some of the compositions. And because of that, that creates like a writer's block. So, and and it's not that I can't write. I mean, I could write if I have a project. Um, somebody else is hiring me for a project, and they say, "Hey, we want you to do this, this, and this," and then I write some music for them or whatever. Um, but I'm talking about my own compositions as far as getting writer's block because I haven't done anything with those compositions yet. So that's kind of a strange thing because in one sense it uh seems to belie the idea that I'm all about venturing into the unknown, you know, but it seems to belie that in a certain way, and then almost
Yeah,
sort of makes me think of myself almost as a pragmatist in some sense with that. So,
you're a thinker though.
right.
So, you know, yeah, you're a thinker. If you were this extroverted extroverted intuition feeler, then you will just fly off into
All right.
yeah, an ENFP type. That's a type that is kind of like they're feelers. They have this extroverted intuition, and yeah, but you're a thinker. You know that stuff has to work at some so, uh, at some level, right? So
Right.
good points being made there all around. And by the way, this kind of so ladies and gentlemen, okay, to bring us back to where we are. This is the second part of the video. First part, really, we talked about those four dichotomies. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Okay. Are you a sensor or an intuitive? Are you a feeler or thinker? Or are you a perceiver or a judger? And we talked about those things rather elaborately. Go ahead and check out part one. And today we're looking at the function so that we can then look at these different types. And we're kind of just scattershotting through it right now, the functions and seeing the different types and such, so that we can begin to get some more context. So that when the video that we're going to watch says, hey, here's an ENTJ, the ENTJ is a captain and they're pragmatic. And we're like, okay, what does that mean with regards to their functions? Okay. So if we were to, let's say, take the ENTJ, for example, they are TE dominant, just like so far the working theory is that Dr. Thunder is a TI dominant. Okay. So basically, TE dominant, extroverted thinker. That's why they tend to dominate organizations, for example. Okay. They see a hierarchy, they understand a hierarchy. They see a system, they understand the system. They're always thinking in terms of systems. Okay. And they're very good at working systems. They think they should be at the top of systems, hence they rise to the top of systems. The secondary function is NI, which is that introverted intuition which converges, which is a great way to become to do things efficiently, right? So they see a system, they have NI to kind of to converge and find the path and not meander too much. So that ENTJ is that type of person. I'm going to say one more thing, and then we're going to talk about the last two functions I think we haven't talked about. Um, you might notice that, and I don't know, is Kaizo gone? Is he back? But you'll find that you might not it's not necessarily the best for you to work with, or you might not jive necessarily with uh somebody who has the same functions as you. For example, I find that NI and NE mix very well. Okay. I don't do NE much. I want to do NI. I want to converge things, right? But people who are extroverted intuitors, um, I think we both find ourselves useful to each other, right? I like because they can, they like ideas, they can explore ideas. So I like that about them because I'm also an idea person. I'm a first function intuitive, and I intuitive first function, and I think that perhaps, and maybe the NE people can speak for themselves, perhaps they appreciate my ability to see all these crazy things they're saying, which tends to be the case that most other people can't see it. But not only see it, but then kind of try to converge it into a point, right? Trying to bring it all to a place, try to kind of settle it on something, on a spot, and then also create some kind of practical set of analogies, or stuff like that, usefulness with that TE. First of all, Kaizo, what are your thoughts about that regarding, hey, just because you're introverted, or you're extroverted, think intuitive, now you think, oh, you got to get along with other extroverted intuitives, you might find that that's not really how it works. I find that introverted intuition and extroverted intuition actually work well with each other. What are your thoughts, Kaizo, and then Dr. Thun?
Yeah, actually, I generally agree with what you've stated there. Because I think generally with extroverted intuition, what we're trying to do is perceive reality as it is. So we're trying to see all the angles in everything. The problem with that is then you lose the point, because a point means that you've kind of taken a singular perspective, or you've converged all of the perspective into something useful. So yes, generally, let's say if I'm speaking to an introverted intuitive, first they can understand all the perspectives that I'm iterating, and not just that, they can take all those perspectives, converge it into the, let's say the point of the journey, or the point of the goal, the job, or something. There's a great way that we can kind of move forward. So the problem is when I'm talking with other extroverted intuitions, we end up just going around into more chaos over a lost point, right? Someone, start arguing about irrelevant things. But let's say if I'm speaking to Ike, we can generally move to a point and then keep kind of there's a directionality to it when there's an introverted intuition perspective added there.
Makes sense. Yeah. So, Dr. Thunder, what are your thoughts about that? As Kaiser was speaking, and one of the things that I tend to use as an analogy is the page in the book. That, if you just, you can think of space, or you can think of a book, right? And in space, you have all these different planes that you can draw, an infinite number of planes, right, slicing through different perspectives, if you will. The introverted intuitive is is able to, not just able to, everyone is able to, but they're apt to, they want to take a particular slice, find the most relevant slice, and then really paint out the details in that particular slice, that particular lens, right? And say, hey, let's look at it through this particular lens number 42, angle number 6, with this particular green filter. And I think that it best fits all these things that we're talking about, right? While if it's just purely extroverted intuition, it's going to be looking at this 3D sphere with all kinds of things happening, if that makes. But anyways, what are your thoughts, Dr. Thunder? The point being that you don't necessarily, uh, you know, groove well with, with people whom have exactly the same function as you. Sometimes it's there are these opposites that work well together.
Yeah, yeah. Opposites attract and all that. Uh, so I was thinking, see, because you want to be able to say something meaningful, right? So an artist, or so creative, or someone that's trying to produce new content, something new, something that doesn't exist. You want to have something that means something, not just something that theoretically doesn't exist. Like
Can I
you
can
want
I
to
just stop you there for a second, Dr. Thunder?
go ahead.
So this is actually a very good example. Dr. Thunder doesn't miss anything. For example, when I could use the word introverted intuition is about finding a point, converging a point, and then I kind of added my perspective there. Now, Dr. Thunder is now using his intuition to add meaning, and relating it to music, because that point that Ike was talking about, right? That seeing the path length. That's exactly what Dr. Thunder is talking about in a more creative realm. With meaning, like that's exactly what that meaning is, right? When you've created something that has converged so many ideas into one. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Thunder.
Yeah, well, you're trying to say something. So you have, so say you have all of these possibilities at your disposal, and you can keep developing more possibilities, but at some point, you still have to say something that means something. So yeah, it's a you can see how you can get sort of uh, enamored by all of the possible shiny things, but never actually utilize them to make anything.
Hmm. So, and again, to this point, let's say if we stick with the individual, because we're talking about two people working together, or I was using that point. But if we stick with the individual will have to develop, like if you're a natural NE person, extroverted intuition, you will have to develop your introverted intuition at some point to become more fully rounded, right? But where you start and your first gear and the most easy one will be the your first your dominant function. So for me, I do have to I had to formalize my TI, my logic, right? Work on it, but it's not my natural. It's not where I start from. I start with introverted intuition and then extroverted thinking. Later on, I work on my TI and get that kind of nice and well. All of us, the point I'm making is, all of us have to develop all of these. Now we're never going to be as strong as a, like an ENTJ, for example, that TE Dom. Try as you might, Dr. Thunder, you're never going to be your dad. You're not going to. It's just not good, and you don't even want to, right? It's not like you want. So, but you do have to develop pragmatism, though. You can't just be like, oh, my dad just all he says is just I don't no 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 no. You do have to develop TE, even though you are at heart a pure logic, pure principle, pure truth person, as opposed to just pragmatism, right? Um, Now, the I think we went through all of them. Okay, we talked about introverted feeling, extroverted feeling. We talked about introverted intuition just last time and extroverted intuition. We talked about introverted sensing and extroverted sensing, though, is one that I kind of just glossed over and said that it's mainly easy, but I don't know. Now that Kaizo is here, maybe we can explain introverted sensing versus extroverted sensing, right? What is introverted sensing and what is extroverted sensing? It's one of the ones that actually is not as clear cut, even though it seems that way. But go ahead, Kaizo. What is the difference? Like, what is the sensing thing? Okay, so sensing is let's call it the pure perception, pure your senses. You see things, you open your eyes, you see things in the world. But there's an extroverted and an introverted sense of that. What is the difference?
Yeah, I'm gonna try not to get too like so many ideas are obviously coming to my mind of how I can conceptualize it, but I'm trying to converge it so it makes sense. So with introverted sensing, this is more of your self-awareness to your bodily functions. It's more of presentness, right? And not just presentness, but also a long time span. So an example of introverted sensing is okay, knowing when you're hungry, knowing when you're feeling tired, knowing when, and sort of comfort, right? Knowing how to place all these things, these ideas where your body is concerned, and then obviously the solution would be, hey, if you're cold, find a way to prevent that, right? It's your internal bodily functions and feelings, as well as your long past, so your laws in your culture, um, the memories, sort of sentimentality. It's all about all of that, right? So in this time, my body felt this way, so I have this memory, and then this memory kind of creates this concept of me. So introverted sensing is also linked to a sense of self. So people with high introverted sensing are the kinds of people that would find it difficult to have an ego death, or rather overcome one, because they have so much sentimentality like imbued within their bodily function. Now extroverted sensing, this is more of your proud. Think of it like LeBron James, all the basketball players that can shoot really high percentages, 3-point shooters, all that kind of stuff. It's the ability for you and your body. Okay, it's a differentiation between your body and the outside world, and how you can navigate in that. So it's people with fast twitch muscle fibers, these people that tend to have quite high extroverted sensing, they're able to sort of maneuver their body. They understand time complexities when it comes to doing things in real time. They're very real time focused, and they can kind of force things through real time sort of situations. So they're generally are great at doing things, basically, and especially if it's real time. Meanwhile, introverted sensing is more of a long past, and the presentness is more of themselves and their body and their sort of sense of self, as opposed to extroverted sensing, which is more how does your body reflect with the outside world, and how do you maneuver around that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, let's say we take, because now we're gonna go to the videos, and Dr. Thunder, I don't know. I think we should start from the very first, as opposed to continue from number 8, because now that we have all these functions and everything, I think we can put a whole lot more context to the individual ones, right? So, as intuitive thinkers, all three of us here, let's say, um, the sensing aspect might not be our strongest suit. Would that be fair to say? Even though some you may be more SI, maybe SE, whatever it might end up being, but uh, that we're not going to be as strong as a first function sensor type in in doing these things, either internally or externally that you described, Kaizo. Is that correct?
Yes, for me, 100%. So let's say, yeah, I'm not a very good sensor. So I am an introverted sensor, but because it's my fourth function, it is actually my weakest conscious function. Meaning, I'm very aware of it. I do value it, but I'm just not good at it, right? So, this is where I have to find alternatives like meditation to make sure um, I don't let's say suffer because of my lack of high sensing. A simple example is recently I was coughing like crazy. I thought, maybe I've just caught this virus, right? If my introverted sensing was better, like that, kind of put together with my TI, my logic, and my intuition, I would have been able to discover the problem immediately. But for me, because I'm a fourth function sensor, there is a time dilation. So what that means is I can do it, and I can even feel it in the real time, but it doesn't create such a high enough signal or stimulation to make me see it in real time. So that's now the issue when you're an intuitive is depending on where your sensing is, third or fourth, you might suffer from not having high resolution on that sensing aspect.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So, um, Dr. Thunder, we can start from ENTJ, which I think was the first person that they used right after we talked about the functions and whatnot. Um, or we could continue from 8 and then go back to 1. Doesn't really matter because I don't, we're going to talk about the functions of each, and I think it'll take some time. So we can start anywhere we want to. But yeah.
Okay, so we could just okay, so let's just start it from the beginning,
Okay.
and um, and then I'll just pause each time, and then yeah. Let's see here. Well, at least from the first person that they describe. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, so what is that dimension? That's not what we want. We want to go past that stuff, right? Okay, no. Okay, there we
Yeah, I
go.
want to.
ENTJ. That's where we want to start, right? ENTJ.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, there we go. Let's do that. Here we go.
Types. Number 1, ENTJ, the commander. If you love nothing more than the feeling of accomplishment, you may be an ENTJ. This personality type excels at creating a vision and then executing that vision to the very end. Because of this, ENTJs are often known for their ability to accomplish anything they put their mind to. And as indicated by their commander nickname, ENTJs also make great leaders because of their charisma and natural authority. Number 2, IS.
Okay, so you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, what are their functions? Yeah, I'm going to talk about their functions and also talk about why we talked about functions before we went here. Because, for example, somebody just started like, oh, if you love to achieve or if you want to, and it's like, yeah, everybody wants to do whatever the hell they just said this person wants to do, right? So it gets a little confusing. But in ENTJ, we'll talk about the first four functions, which are the kind of the important ones in terms of at least beginning to understand this thing. The first function is TE. They're TE dominant, okay? Extroverted thinking dominant, right? They're always looking at systems, right? So, and I don't know if what's his name. Uh, so people like Steve Jobs and what's his the chef that they showed, the Hell's Kitchen chef that they showed, come to mind. Now they not necessarily be an ENTJ as they're saying that they are, but they definitely do express that kind of a thing where they're constantly looking at systems, pragmatism, how to get things done, and all this kind of stuff. So their first four functions are TE and then NI, right? And then SE and then FI, right? FI is introverted feeling, SE is extroverted sensing, and then NI is that intuition. So, Kaizo, do you have any thoughts about the ENTJ and this particular
Yes,
function?
yeah, exactly. So, okay, and I got a couple intuitions here about this type. So, with the ENTJ type, the commander, right? They're very good at exercising things, right? Generals. Uh, Sorting mechanisms for them in productivity is extremely high. They value output more than other things. And you can look at it as you mentioned, Ike, in the cognitive stack, right? TE is first, okay, so that's getting shit done. Second, you have NI, which is the sorting mechanism, sorting through things and converging to the correct ways to do things efficiently. Then also they have SE in there, so these guys are extremely gifted in getting things done. Finally, they do have FI as last function, which is now the issue with having a FI as last function. This is why people think they're mean or they're not emotionally intelligent, even though they are emotionally intelligent. They're not emotionally sensitive. And by sensitive, I mean they don't care enough about other people's internal preferences because their FI is actually at the last function. So they can't even relate with other people. So for them, they're thinking, if you want to make money, go out there and do things. Meanwhile, someone else with a higher FI, they're thinking about how, you know, Dwight Mann is always, putting a glass ceiling, etc. So they're less willing to entertain if inefficient um, complaints.
The last function in your four function stack, by the way, I'll just mention this and I'll let Dr. Thunder kind of react here. The last function in your four function stack is going to be the one that gives you the most trouble. So FE for like a Dr. Thunder type, for example, and myself. Okay. Um, and I think I don't even have FE any, like I'm probably worse with FE than Dr. Thunder. Okay. But that's going to be where you have trouble. So FI is the last of the ENTJ. So that means that they cannot sense how someone is receiving the bashing that they're giving them. So shout out to Gordon Ramsay again, or some other people in this, even in this manosphere space, that they don't seem to get how rude they're being, to use a term, right? They don't seem to get that. It doesn't translate that, oh, you're actually poking a pin into a sensitive spot, because their sensitive spot, they're not even really in touch with it. It's at the bottom of their stack. That introverted feeling part, they just keep on trampling over other people's stuff because they don't really sense it in them. What do you have to say, Dr. Thunder? You're the one with the ENTJ dad.
um. Yeah, I'm not. I'm a. Yeah, I'm not a feeler. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not an extroverted feeler. So, oh goodness, there's certain like I I, I really just need people to tell me. So tell me how you're feeling. Like if I if I say that to someone, it's because I don't, it's because I can't sense it, right? That's not what that's not what I do. I perceive things, but as far as like what you're, yeah, that is not my thing. Um,
Hmm.
and though I try, though I may try to do that, um, yeah, I'm just not. I mean, I have empathy for people. Like, if you can tell me how you feel, or like you can like show me how something, whatever. I mean, I'll have empathy. I can sort of put myself in their position, and I can kind of, you know, that's cool. I'm able to do that, but as far as like just out the gate sensing it, I'm not particularly good at that. So
Yeah, so
Yeah, and
actually, Dr. Thunder, you brought up.
yeah, let me just say this, Kaizo, and then you can go in because of all three of us, you're probably the best with extrovert feeling, even though, I mean, it's relative, right? So relatively, you're probably the best with it. Um, so while I may sense, with my introverted intuition being the way I look at things, I may sense the subtle shifts of all manner, including subtle shifts in how people are feeling. I may not understand the logic of it, right? I may not be able to say, okay, well, like, why now did the cloud decide to come over here? If you can relate to what I'm saying, Dr. Thunder, right? So it's not just the tell me how you're feeling, but it's like, can you maybe give me some insight as to why you feeling this now? Like, you know, it seemed to have come out of the blue, which feelings tend to do, but by the way, and for someone like me, and probably like Dr. Thunder as well, it's like I don't see why, or like this doesn't seem to adhere to any principles. But anyways, Kaiser, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think Dr. Thunder actually hit on something pretty interesting and very important here. So there is a time complexity aspect and also a dimensionality aspect. So let me break that down. So Dr. Thunder, for example, and you and I guess me to an extent, what we don't do is we don't engage with the sensitivity to emotions in real time. What we might do is, and of course, now society, general society, the normies will think that we don't have empathy when it's the inverse, right? Because what we do is we actually have empathy across time
We'll
for them,
actually
just
write
not
a
in
book
that
about it.
moment.
We're the ones that'll. I'm sorry to interrupt, and I know there's a delay. That's why I'm talking over you. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of emphasize the point that you're saying. Not in real time, but someone like myself, for example, might be the person that understands it fully to write chapter and verse about extroverted feeling and all the feelings and such and such and such. But in real time, I'm not going to be looking at all the multi-dimensionalities of all the subtleties of your feeling, even though in a broader context, I can take it into my intuition and my thinking and my analogy world and really, really dissect it down. But in real time, it's a one-dimensional object. But to extroverted feelers, there's so many subtleties to extroverted feeling. But to me, I'm just looking at this flat thing. But anyways, go ahead.
Exactly, exactly. So let's say, for example, you have a friend who's getting really fat. Okay, well, what do you do? Do you tell them that in real time? No. Do you try to tell them, oh, there's nothing wrong in real time, which is what most people do with so-called sensitive people? No, right? Maybe what we would do here is, hey guy, I really like MMA. You get into it, you go together to the gym, etc. So there is a time complexity actually with real empathy, not just sort of because I think our sort of empathy is linked to productivity and reality. So we've always got a practical aspect to it. And then also, if you look at the functions, there's a dimensionality to it now, right? So your weakest function is one dimensional. That's why we can't engage in that real time, going down all the rabbit holes of someone's complex feelings in that moment. But what we can do is, if let's say you're a high level intuitive or extroverted thinker, like an ENTJ type, first function TE, you're looking at that as a four-dimensional object. To you, you see everything about productivity. You see everything about creativity if you're got like some kind of intuition at a high level, which is why I say generally, right, success, in different fields is definitely heavily influenced by your personality type, because this is the path of least resistance. It doesn't mean other people can't do it. It's just that this is the path of least resistance.
Good, good, good. Um, I guess we can go on to the next one unless you have something to say, Doctor.
Yes, let's keep going.
STJ, the inspector. Some of the most successful leaders and innovators throughout history have been ISTJs, including Warren Buffett, J.D. Rockefeller, and Queen Elizabeth II. This is because ISTJs are known for being methodical, thorough, and dependable. If you're an ISTJ, you'll achieve your goals no matter what gets in your way through calm, steady progress. You also have a strong respect for tradition and law and order, which you may bring to both your career and your personal relationships. Number 3,
ISTJ. Now, for people out there who might have seen King of the Hill, I know Dr. Thunder, you know King of the Hill. Everybody knows King of the Hill. If you
Yeah.
want to think of an ISTJ, think Hank Hill. Okay, they tend to be the most kind of just stable people. they're not from my point, just from the point of view where I'm standing, they're not lopsided in any way. They're not like us weird intuitives that kind of want to dash off into weird corners and path less traveled and such, right? They are stable people. Their first function is SI. Okay, that's that whole thing about my body and the history of my body and the history of the culture, and that I felt this way, that kind of thing. They're very stable. They keep tradition, right? Now, there's subtleties to about saying someone keeps tradition. It's more about knowing they know what works from an SI perspective, and then the next function is TE, and then FI, and then NE. My wife, I think, is an ISTJ. Okay, some of our function actually where she has SI, I have NI, and then the next two are the same, TE and then FI, right? So ISTJ, Hank Hill, super stable. They got SI and then they have TE, meaning they can organize things in the world. They don't have any weird feeling type stuff going on in the first. They have FI though, which means that they have that authenticity thing and a prickly. They can be prickly people. In other words, they can yeah, it can be sensitive in that particular area. Okay, um, but and then they have NE in their last function. It's what they will resort to in times of crisis. Is they'll start trying to divert and find all kinds of different things, blah blah blah. But Kaiser, what are your thoughts about the ISTJ, SITE, FINE?
Yeah, actually, this is a very interesting type. These tend to be perfectionists in trade. So, if you kind of see these kinds of people, right, the ones who've gone into science, they tend to be the best technicians. Um, they tend to be the best mechanics because they're very observant, right? They do have that SI, as you mentioned, the memory of, again, how their bodies respond to themselves and the environment and the past of everything. So when they learn something, they create a model, right? Let's say I create a TI model, right, of how logic interacts with other systems. For them, they create a model of all the skills that they've accrued, and then they build it in there, right? So when they learn something, they really learn something to the end and to the T. So that's a lot of their sort of benefits of having an ISTJ around is they will know what they know and they'll know it to a high precision level because they keep training it right with that SI stuff until they get that I forgot the name of it exactly, right? But that sort of bodily flow, I forgot. There's a name that I'm looking for in
Yeah,
my mind, right? I can't find it.
it might be tacit knowledge you're talking about, or some
Right.
other people have other ways of describing that thing, right? But Dr. Thunder, do you know any ISTJs? Do you know any Hank Hill, any masters of propane and propane accessories?
Hmm. I think I do, but I think that this is I okay. So I think because of my, you know, so a lot of my friends are musicians, and then I interact with a lot of academics, and then all other people are all thinkers and sort of collaborator types. And so then I also tend to deal with folks that are sort of a little off the beaten path. You know, they're venturing into lands unknown and stuff like this. So though I'd have to say I know some, I, that's those aren't the folks that I tend to interact with.
Mhm.
Let me make the question easier. So for example, you're a musical polymath, right? Amongst other stuff, you've literally gone to try to master. I say try, uh, but you've gone to try to master several different instruments. An ISTJ would be really mastering one, maybe two, because of the environment that they're in. If you're teaching, you got to at least be able to transpose it to some other kind of instrument. But they would really go deep, 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 deep into one, right? These are the kinds of people that would play, Bach or Beethoven perfectly, right? They won't have that need for novelty. Uh, Rather, they would have a need for knowing what they know well. So, do you not know anyone like that from your students
Yeah, well, I mean, I know a bunch of
or
folks like
colleagues?
I know a bunch of folks like that. I don't, with respect to the representation of them being as sort of stable and uh, usual almost. That's the part that, um, yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, you don't want to say you
Then I.
don't hang out with normies, huh?
right, right. No, no ham and eggers.
All right. Let's go to the next one. I believe it's
Oh,
ENTP.
wait a
Looking
minute,
at
that's
the
me.
next.
Oh,
That is you, sir.
ENTP, the debater. Do you have a secret, or not so secret, rebellious side? Do you love engaging with others through debate? If this sounds like you, it's a sign you might be an ENTP. If you're an ENTP, you'll likely have opinions about just about everything and not be afraid to voice them. In fact, you love nothing more than a great debate, even if your opinion is the odd one out. Being a rebel, you're not afraid to go against the status quo, and are even less afraid to argue your reasoning as to why. Number 4, ISTP.
So, since you're the resident ENTP here, let me name the functions first, and then go ahead, Kaizo. So your first function is NE. You're one of the few, um, other than INTJs and INFJs, and maybe and also ENFPs. You're one of the few people who has intuition as their first function, and that just opens the gates to weirdness, right? You can you can go off the wrong path if your intuition is too high up the stack, as opposed to being a stable sensor type. So you have NE first, okay? That's that extroverted intuition that we talked about, building this networks in the space of abstraction. And then you have TI. So you're concerned about truth, logic, not the logic of pragmatism, not Dr. Thunder's dad looking at the organization of bureaucracy and the logic of bureaucracy, but just logic itself. Okay, and then you have FE and then SI. So, what are your thoughts, sir, about the ENTP NETI?
Yes, yes. I don't know if you guys know Jordan Peterson. A lot of high IQ people say things like he rambles or he waffles, right? I think when you're, let's say, first function intuitive, especially with the any type. Again, I'm not saying Jordan Peterson is. I'm just using him as an example. You will end up saying stuff or speaking in conceptualisms. So, as you grow up, you realize people don't understand anything you're saying. So that's why I had to develop the sharp, the tool function, my TI, my introverted thinking. Now these days I rely more on that when I'm communicating externally, because it allows me now to sort of make myself more understandable, because otherwise I'll be stuck in this conceptual realm. The things I'm saying make sense, but it's like throwing I don't know how to express it, the best way, but it's like just throwing out things which to me are meaningful and they're very exact, but to everybody else they have to unpack it first before interacting with it. So I use that TI, my second function, to unpack the ideas that come into my mind, and I use FE, third function, to communicate it the best of my ability to other people. That's what I do on my channel, social engineering, right? It's how I engage the listeners. I allow some dust in there, some little bit chaos. I rein it in again, and I bring the TI. I don't have taboo topics. If I may even create like a fake persona, like I care about one thing so that I appear human to them, but realistically, it's just to give them some points. So the FE aspects allows me to understand human nature. Meanwhile, the intuition and logic, allows me to sort of find the best routes to control the debate. I like openness. That's why I run my channel more chaotic than yourself or Dr. Thunder, because I love that sort of play.
The fake persona that you mentioned is one of the definite um, things, the differences. That's if you take me, take Dr. Thunder, and take you. I don't think you have to be a genius to just observe us for a little bit to see that you're the one that is least authentic. And given the fact that you know what I mean, then you know what I mean, right? It's you're the Joker. The ENTP is the Joker, right? You're like, who is this guy really? Well, he is what he. That's what he is. He's the Joker. He's not
Yeah,
the guy that's going to be.
I think your friend. I think your friend, that Falcon Black, right? One of my subscribers called him a fake stoic, and then they were speaking about me in their group chat, saying, "Who is this Kaiser? Is he a troll? Is he serious?" They were really trying to pin me down. I kind of feel bad for them a little bit, but yeah, you're right. I don't have authenticity as people know it, the way I represent myself, and I have to create these sort of fake personas in order for me to engage with them, because the reality of my personality is simple. You can actually see through me if you can see through me. You have to have a certain, like Dr. Thunder saw through me from the beginning. A lot of, people in Manosphere thought I was a male feminist, for example. I don't know how, but the people who can see through me, they can see.
Yeah, so go ahead, Dr. Thunder. What are your thoughts about this ENTP type, the Joker type, the non-authentic kind of weird personality, hard to understand by normies?
Yeah, and always looking for a debate. So, um, yeah, I mean, I actually don't mind interacting with them. It's enjoyable to me, because uh, I like to have discussion, and um, and my family seems to be a number of us like to have discussions and debate and talk, you know, talk on a number of topics. Like, we get together for Thanksgiving or something, and my wife has told me that it's like we just go at each other now, and uh, it's not personal. It's not, nobody's offended. It's none of that. It's just like, that's just how we. Okay, I'm here for it. It's that kind of a thing. So, yep.
Hmm. Yeah, and by the way, the INTP and ENTP, um, NETI, that's the ENTP, and then the INTP is TINE. So you guys got both first two functions the same, just uh, differences in emphasis. So the N, if you were
Yeah, actually,
ENTP, you'd be a little bit more
all our
crazy.
functions are the same. Yeah, all our functions are
Yeah,
actually the same. We're called
it,
sister
yeah,
types.
yeah. It's just one is
I
crazy and
guess
the other is not.
I'm the brother, of course, there, right, in that sister.
Right. One is crazy and the other is not right. All right, let's keep going.
The crafter. Are you someone who values learning through hands on experience? If so, you might be an ISTP. This type often ends up in a career path that allows them to employ their problem solving abilities like engineering, science, or construction. But your desire for hands on experience doesn't only extend to the workplace, you also like to experience the world directly in your free time, often through adventure or thrill seeking behavior. You might be drawn to skydiving, bungee jumping, surfing, or another activity that helps you get your adrenaline up. Number 5, ES.
So TISE, that's the first two functions of this person. So now we may be becoming more comfortable with this ideas of like, the function. So we say TISE, okay, is a thinker, a logical thinker, and then they are looking out there in the world. They're seeing the world. They want to interact with the world with this surfing and such. Dr. Thunder, I believe last time you mentioned that maybe Jesus was an ISTP, I think you said. And
Mm,
then NI and FE are their last functions. So TISENIFE, these people are very good with hands-on things and interacting with the external world out there.
yep.
Um, I they're almost. I know a couple of ISTPs, um, similar to the INTP in terms of that TI thinking aspect, uh, but because they are not intuitive, or or either in the first or second function, I do find them to be a little bit more rigid for my tastes. Um, so, but they're stable. It's like another IST. It's like the fun Hank Hill, right? Stable like Hank Hill, but fun, more kind of and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. What are your thoughts about the ISTP types, Dr. Thunder? I mean, Kaizo first.
Well, Kaiser dropped down. I don't know.
Oh, my bad.
He's probably uh, you know, he's sweeping some dust right now. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think I described. I thought Jesus. It just stuck out to me how they were describing it. It just stuck out to me that it's like Jesus was this, and uh, now there's some thrill seeking and some other stuff like that I don't know that he necessarily was, but he wasn't averse to it based on. I mean, if you look at all of the kind of experiences that he had, I mean, you know, casting demons out of folks, you know, people chasing him around, you know, dropping their kid through the roof and stuff so that he can see him. This just all this kind of stuff. Walking on water, even that the walking on water thing is interesting. That sort of seems to relate strongly with that. So you know he's uh he's out in he's in a boat and he goes out and just starts walking on water, right? And then Peter gets out of the boat and starts walking, but Peter gets he starts paying attention to the wrong stuff. So he starts sinking, right? But that's
Started simping.
yeah, right. He started simping. Um, so, but yeah, that's it's pretty interesting. Obviously the crucifixion, the um, sort of being willing to do that, to go through that. There's like a list of things, and then it makes me wonder about like all the martyrs. I was talking to my son about this. He was asking me about the 12 disciples, what happened to them. I was like, well, um, I said they were a tough bunch. They were all basically tortured to death, except for John the Revelator, who was blinded and exiled. All the rest of them, died gruesome deaths. And Peter, in particular, he was crucified upside down because he told him that he was not worthy of the same death his Lord, his Lord had. So so they crucified him upside down. Um, Goodness, it's
Yeah,
not really funny.
interesting.
Actually, it's not actually funny. I don't want it to come across like I'm laughing that happened to him, but it's just amazing, like how I don't know. That's a different thing. There would be very few people these days that would actually die for something that would actually allow themselves to be tortured, and all they have to do is just like renounce. The folks would be left and right. They just be renouncing like like nothing, because
Yeah,
these
yeah,
newfangled folks are some weak sauce, bro.
yeah. And not to go off on a tangent, but that renounce thing is also an interesting philosophical conversation, because I too believe renounce. Um, in other words, somebody came in here and said, "Hey, we're shooting. Either you're a Muslim or we're shooting you in the head." I'm a Muslim. I'm gonna tell them, like, why? I'm not getting in some weird little. I'm not getting in that weird little space with you. I'll take it up with God. Okay, like,
Well,
I mean,
well, now, but
let's not.
hold up here. But that's not the question, though. But that isn't the question. So, um, renounce is not take on someone else's belief. Renounce is, in particular, it's renounce
Yeah,
Jesus, right? And
yeah,
and remember, and then
yeah,
something that's different about this too is they actually knew Jesus, right? So
yeah.
that maybe there's an added dimension there.
True. Yes, for sure.
So anyhow,
So because obviously the reason I'm saying that renounce is because I think it doesn't matter, or I think there's actually no force to it, right? But when there is actually a force to it, in the case where you know somebody or you're doing something, shall I say, spiritual, right? You're there's a certain kind of, if you're doing something, right? Then obviously it's different. I don't know if Kaiser was
yeah, oh,
come back or
let me say this one last thing about this,
Yeah.
and I know we're on a tangent, but I want to say this last thing about this. I think you're right. If there's force to it, it's a different. We're talking about a different ballgame. Now, understand that if you renounce or not, you're dead. You already know that. That's a done deal. Okay. So what this is about is the manner
mm,
by which you will die.
man,
Okay.
got it.
So you can take the easy way out, just clean and easy. Let's just guillotine. It's over quick. Or you keep talking about this Jesus character, and you got to get drawn and quartered. You got to get crucified upside down. You got to get stoned to death. My son was asking me about somebody being bludgeoned or something. I was reading to him the thing that happened to some of the disciples, somebody being bludgeoned to death, and I was like, well, and he was like, if it was like a metal bat, if it was like an aluminum bat, it would be like one hit. I was like, yeah, it'd be more like about 100 just heavy enough hits to that once you get to 100 hits, then you'd be dead. And then he was like, oh, yeah, that's not that great. The one hit seems like it almost seems like triumphant, like, hey, he went out with a bang. But the 100 hits that are just hard enough that the accumulation of them over the 100 hits, that's what kills you. That's a different sort of thing.
Yes, indeed. So, Kaiser, you're back. We talked about the ISTP, you know, TISENIFE, and then talking about Jesus. And then maybe for the purposes of maybe juxtaposing him with like maybe like a Buddha character, whom is sitting somewhere, you know, doing introverted intuition and coming up with sayings. I don't see him talking to no tax collectors or prostitutes or nothing like that. So just for juxtaposition there in terms of
Yep.
the different types. But what are your thoughts about ISTPs? I say that they're kind of like the slightly more fun ISTJs. But what do you
Yeah.
think about
So
ISTPs?
I think, yeah, before I had to go renew my data, I was trying to say actually, with the ISTJs, you can clearly see the SI. It goes inward into themselves, their past, their memories, and their bodily sort of history of the skills, trades, and sense of self. So they're a little bit more of a true introvert. While the ISTPs, right, they actually use TI first function, then they start using SE in there to build things and sort of go outwards, like adventures, Yeah, so I think that's the main difference there, as you can see, between SE and SI, sensor types, is one is actually it's more of an extroverted engagement, SE. Meanwhile, SI is more of, yourself, sentimentality, and all the stuff as I mentioned there.
Very good. I think we got ESTP next, or maybe ESTJ, but I see
All right. Let's
ESTP
see
for short
here.
for yes.
TP, the persuader. Are you outgoing, logical, and a quick decision maker? If so, you might be an ESTP. Because you're action oriented and very sociable, you are likely skilled at professions like sales, where you can make use of your gregariousness and ability to thrive in a fast paced environment. You don't spend a lot of time over analyzing a situation and don't make decisions based on emotion. This allows you to be an efficient problem solver and someone who's not only great at, but enjoys putting out fires. Number 6, ISFJ, the protector. If you're known as
Oh,
ESTP,
wait a minute. Does the
I
protector the simp? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Go back to the other one first. We'll we'll talk about that later.
the white knight.
Right.
The ESTP, I mentioned last time that this is your bully, um, but not the uncool bully, right? This is the actual cool bully. Uh, and by bully, I just mean someone whom is they're quick witted, they talk smack. Think Mr. Fantastic, for example, if you know, if for those of you who know, uh,
Yeah.
you know this space, right? That kind of guy. That's he likes throwing hands or throwing whatever, and they're about it. At least in terms of this kind of banter back and forth type stuff.
Right.
Um, that's your ESTP. So SE is their first function. They're out there. They just they got eyes wide open, 10 toes down, extroverting, sensing in the world, and then Ti is next. Hence that quick wittedness, right? It's hard to catch him off guard in that kind of a back and forth, throwing jabs at each other. And then Fe being the third function, so they're not bad at doing that either. They're not bad at winning people over and understanding the vibe of the room. And then Ni being last. What are your thoughts, Kaizo, ESTP,
Yeah.
your bully,
Yeah.
your
So,
Mr. Fantastic like type?
yeah. So I don't know if you said 10 toes down, because the last time I debated him, right, he
I
told me,
know,
"Oh, I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
black." Anyways, yeah, it's kind of interesting. So that type of TI, introverted thinking, it's more what I call tactical TI. It's not really about truth at the extent of truth to the end. It's more of how can I win a point? How can I use this truth to actually move forward? So yeah, it's not exactly a pragmatic truth, but it's rephrasing the goalpost switching, right? That's why ESTPs are always there in the debates and very that whole quick wittedness, that's actually tactical
Wait a
TI.
minute.
It's not what I call
ESTPs are women?
strategic. Say
Yeah,
again?
ESTPs are goalpost shifters. Yes, Mr. Fantastic is a woman.
Oh man, I'm
Yeah,
not saying.
no, no, but
You're
remember,
not
Dr.
getting me
Thunder, they
clipped on
came
that.
for me and said,
That's my man.
I'm not really.
That's my man's.
Okay, but they came for me and said, "Oh, Kaiser, you're not even Black American. You shouldn't be talking about the spaces." Yet they were listening to, what was her name? The lady. right? And she's a black British half mixed race woman. You see that there was no logic that was consistent there, right? They came for me, but they were contradicting themselves by giving space to a woman, etc. So yeah, that's exactly what tactical TI. It's there to win a point rather than really grasp at the truth. But it's good because guess what? You look really quick wittedness, right? You're able to come up with real time solutions that you can use and kind of persuade.
You need to persuade your internet to stop cutting you off. Persuade MTM or whatever dusty East African internet service you got to give you more data. But I guess the next one they're going to talk about is this white knight savior. Was it ISFJ?
Yeah.
Maybe you
Da
can go
da da
one
da
step.
da. Oh, 1 second here. I gotta move back just a little bit. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Oh no, what are we saying though? All of these are Sims. All right, okay. Let's all right, let's keep going.
ISFJ, the protector. If you're known as being someone who stands up for those you love, you might be an ISFJ, otherwise known as the protector or the defender. If someone you know gets hurt, you'll jump to help them, even sacrificing your own needs for those you love. Because of this, ISFJs are often thought of as being selfless. But this isn't because you want a pat on the back or praise for your behavior, it just genuinely makes you feel good to care for others. Number 7, INTJ.
So ISFJ, this is your good person, normie good person, right? Not particularly interesting. The first person to die in the horror movie. That's what I got. Like that's that person, right? Their
You're
first
right.
function, yeah,
Right, because not everybody is
yeah. They're
has the powers of
eh,
Captain America. Not everybody has the powers of Captain America.
eh,
So when you step up like that, they just shoot you, and then you're just done. Yeah,
yep, that is the ISFJ. And by the way, this is the
Yeah,
most common type. Go ahead.
have you seen those post-apocalyptic movies where there's either zombies or something, or there's an unknown? ISFJs are the kinds of people that will be opening doors because someone is out there knocking and they seem genuinely in need of help, even though they could be a zombie.
Yep, yep.
That's great.
Because basically the first function is SI, the second function is FE, right? So that second function FE, they use FE as a tool. Uh, Shout out to practitioner in the chat. She prefers INFJ. She's also a second function FE person, with NI though in the first. So she might see past the. She might not open the door because that intuition is there to be like, she's gonna feel. She's gonna really feel for the person, but she might not open the door. But the SI, that
She said, "I'm
sensing,
gonna."
introverted.
She says, "I'm gonna love you from a distance."
There you go. Um,
You stay over there. I can talk to you though. I'll talk to you until the monster gets you.
so the ISIFETINE, right? SIFE, and then the thinkers. Okay, they're not they're not necessarily thinkers, but they got they can do TI, you know, just like the INFJ, by the way, NIFETI. The INFJ can also do TI, but it's something that they have to develop in the later on. I have a thing about INFJs, by the way, which in the sense that I think that a well-developed, a self-actualized, to use shorthand type talk, INFJ probably are the best type of humans there is, right? A well-developed INTJ is just an INTJ, it just is what it is. But an INFJ, and the reason being because of FE. Now, not to go on a whole soliloquy about this or soliloquy, but to be a well-developed INFJ is hard AF because they have FE as a second function. So they actually do care about the feeling of the people in the room and such. They're gonna get pulled 1,000 different ways. They care about Thanksgiving dinner and this and that and the other and who's feeling this way and that way. So if they're able to actually move past that and develop their TI, develop their SE, which is a weak function of theirs, and actually engage with the world and do things, become active in the world, and they get their get ish done capacities up. They are very, and I know a couple of them. Not know personally, but there's some INFJs that are out there in the YouTube streets, in the streets of the industry slash writing books or talking heads or whatever. And I find that a well-developed INFJ is almost like a perfect human being, but it is so hard to get there because you got to get over this FE hurdle, right? So that's my little preaching on shout out to the INFJs out there. But that was the ISFJ, the most common type, the type that gets killed first in the horror movie. They're kind of selfless, nothing particularly, from my perspective, interesting about an ISFJ. Shout out to the ISFJs out there, but yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
A. The architect. Otherwise known as the mastermind, INTJs are incredibly logical and strategic in their way of approaching the world. If you're an INTJ, you have high expectations of not only yourself, but also those around you. Good enough doesn't cut it for you. You expect excellence. While this can sometimes be taken to an extreme and lead to harmful levels of perfectionism, most of the time it means that INTJs find success in whatever area they pursue. In fact, INTJs are some of the highest earners out of all of the Myers-Briggs personality types.
Super chat, Jesus.
Number 8.
Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. So kind of vague in terms of the description there. It is true. The ENTJ. So let me juxtapose the ENTJ and the INTJ for a second. But first, let me talk about their functions. The INTJ is an intuitive first. Again, one of the few intuitive first types where the way the way we perceive the world is in pure abstraction. It's we're very very much in our heads. The next one is TE. So there's that kind of, let me analogize, let me understand the system, let me look at things. Very kind of mechanistic way of thinking. Okay, and then FI. That's that authenticity thing, right? So very stubborn type people and very prickly in a particular kind of sense. They can so when I'm doing my FI thing is when I go off on my you're a BAN, okay, you're a bitch ass nigga. What the hell? I don't give a crap about any why super anti FI, almost to like might seem narcissistic in a certain sense. They have a vision with their NI, they want to achieve it using their TE. They have this FI authenticity thing, and then SE is our weak point. In other words, we're actually okay, not good at doing things, which is very interesting. That this particular type tends to achieve a lot, right? But in terms of actually engaging with the world, the way it'll be easy for an ESTP or an ISTP, right, to just go out there and start doing stuff. No, we're probably going to sit and think, right? Same thing with INFJs, by the way. They're more going to sit and think, okay? Now, when we do act, though, we are probably going to get past the people who have been doing stuff for a while, right? So we're going to sit and think for a while. We need to develop the habit of getting things done. In other words, actually taking action. When we do take action, it's going to be very efficient because we've done this NITE thing. So go ahead, Kaizo here. I said I was going to talk about ENTJs as well, in the sense that ENTJ is TE first. So that they tend not to be as, they're not TE people. they're not about this idea stuff. They're not in conceptual land as much. The INTJ will be more like a philosopher type, right? The ENTJ, not so much. They can study philosophy too. They're intuitives as well and such, but the INTJ is going to be way, way more in his head. Go ahead, Kaizo and Dr. Thunder. What are your thoughts about NITE and then FISE?
Yeah, I mean, an example of let's say, a ENTJ type is man of yesterday, and then an INTJ type is obviously super chat Jesus. You can clearly see, the two of them are sort of driven by different goals. One is more philosophical, INTJ types. Yes, they do, when it comes to the world of doing things and getting S done, INTJs are there, but that's not what drives them exactly. I think what drives INTJs, especially with NI, first function intuition, is is actually kind of the consolidation of all the ideas that they've come up with throughout their life, and now they're pursuing something that they can put, let's say, a practical number, goal, or sort of direction to. But they are actually generally very sort of more philosophical in their approach to life and just things in general. Because yeah, as you mentioned, like TE, extroverted thinking, is not it's not a particularly intellectual function. It's a pragmatism function. The intellectual function there really is the introverted intuition, which INTJs have. But I think this is where, let's say, the externalization, people seeing an INTJ from the outside will think that they move similar to the ENTJ, but in reality, the INTJ is driven with more sort of internal, deep feelings. Because even if you notice, their FI is higher function, it's third and not fourth. So they do have a much more sort of complex understanding of themselves, their feelings, their emotions, etc. A bit like, let's say, as you mentioned earlier, Ike, an INFJ that's really well developed is a great human. An INTJ that's so well developed is actually very sort of emotionally high IQ in that sense, because they're at least very in tune with who they are. They're not going to miss their own feelings. They know it, and they also kind of, let's say, only deal with things that are matching those internal.
Shout out, shout out, shout out. Dr. Thunder, before you go here, I want to, they keep on showing Elon Musk. And so Elon Musk versus certain other types, like let's say maybe the other guy, Steve Jobs. Okay. Elon Musk, you just listen to him talk, you're going to see that this guy is driven by ideas more than the iPhone, let's say, right? Or
Hmm.
just production. Like, so these INTJs, they're right next to the ENTJ, right? They're kind of doing similar things, captains of industry type, but driven by very different types of things. One is definitely an introvert, driven by their internal images, internal concepts, and this FI, high FI, they have this strong sense of authenticity and feeling and whatnot. And they're competing, they're both very competitive, but they do not. The INTJ tends more, like most introvert types, tends to compete with certain abstract versions of themselves or some kind of thing, some kind of standard, as opposed to an ENTJ that literally just looks at a pyramid, like a structure, and wants to be on top of the structure, right? So again, you think Elon Musk versus, and if anybody who knows what's his name, this is a more obscure person, but he was a partner of Elon Musk at the PayPal days. There's this group called the PayPal Mafia. They're all billionaires, and they've all been serial billionaire company creators. These are Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, David Sachs, and a few other people. These are people that are responsible for YouTube, LinkedIn, many other companies after pay, and we all know the Elon Musk story, right? And uh, one thing about Peter Thiel and this Elon Musk guy, you listen to them again, just to reiterate this point. You're seeing that they're kind of like more philosophical, kind of coming from some kind of weird introspective shaman place, as opposed to somebody who just wants to build stuff. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Doctor Thunder?
Yeah, the INTJ. So see, I thought that I was INTJ until our conversation last week. and I knew the INT part for sure. The J part I was pretty sure, but I'm more of a P. But um, the so the INTJ is about 1% of the population, and INTP is about 3% of the population. So both of them are pretty rare. Um, but I mean, other than that, I don't have anything additional to add.
That 1%. Um, yeah, 1%, and also the most mistyped. I think it's easy to. Yeah, there are many reasons why perhaps it is the most mistyped. Is Kaiser still there?
It seems like he is.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah. INFJ, INTJs tend to be a lot of mistypes.
Why do you think people mistype INFJ, INTJ as much, so much?
Yeah, I think okay. So okay, there's quite a few reasons. One reason is the fact that they're the coolest types out there, right? They're this mystical sort of type with the NI, and again, they do have that shaman kind of feel to them. That they are somehow, it's like almost like they're the people that move society forward, either from the intellectual side or the cultural side. As you mentioned earlier, with an ISFJ isn't going to move society. She's going to she's going to embody the cultures of what society has created, and try to preserve it. You see, INFJ is the sort of cultural priestess out there, and who's kind of moving the culture forward. INFJs are the types, and INTJs who, let's say, the from all the way from Vikings, that warrior class, all the way down to now the most docile Scandinavians type. They're the people that move that culture forward. So I think people want to be unique, and everybody kind of sees themselves as main character syndrome, right? So if you have characteristics that uh, even I thought I was an INTJ once when I read the mastermind title, right? Before I started to look deeper into it. So yeah, there is that main character syndrome that INFJ, INTJs tend to have.
Okay, well, let's move on. And I think that it's perhaps when people I think the outward description of this thing, anyways. The INTJ gets perhaps some undue hype, some undue marketing department hype. Perhaps that may not necessarily be what it. But anyways,
Warranted. Yeah.
let
I
me
mean,
let's move.
because really where it's at
Yeah,
is INTPs. So
there you go.
yeah, we can tribalize this too. That's right. That's right. um, I think that's probably a good place maybe to park. We're about halfway through the video now, so I think we're in a good place to um, next week go through the rest of them and then see how they're going to wrap this up.
Indeed. Yeah, next week, Getting Ish Done Wednesday will be on my channel. Let's see, next week, Wednesday, what date is that? That is on the 4th, because I'll be on a plane. Probably will not be able to. So, case closed will be, yeah, that'll probably have to be, I'm flying back. This time is only 1 month in in the dusty land, in the dusty motherland. So I'll be flying back. So we have to do something about case closed. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this particular broadcast of Getting Ish Done, where we have exposed you to the cognitive functions: introverted sensing, introverted thinking, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling, and extroverted feeling, and then the intuition part, we can be introverted and extroverted as well. Okay, I think that some of these are easier to understand than others, but definitely understanding the functions and understanding where they lie in the stack of the various individuals gives you a better feel for what exactly drives people And what's the difference between a Steve Jobs type versus an Elon Musk type? They seem to be doing the same kind of thing, seem to be on top of industry, seem to be making money, but one is an introverted, intuitive type with a intuition at the top versus somebody that just has extroverted thinking and it's about arranging a cabinet. These are cabinet arrangers. Well, no shade to ENTJs. These are powerful people. They're very very. ENTJ is like a freight train. Okay, just it's like a juggernaut. They cannot be stopped. Okay, but they're not. They're driven by different things. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, as we went through this, I think that introverted feeling and extroverted feeling was what we started out with, and I think that it's kind of clear regarding the feeling of the group versus your feeling of authenticity. Okay, the same thing with extroverted thinking and introverted thinking. I think those two, if we get those two, those are good enough. And then for the intuitives, but by the way, I don't know what percentage of the world is intuitive, but most people are not intuitive. So the intuitives can understand the whole NE versus NI part, but it's about your relationship with abstraction. NI, introverted intuition, is going down, converging, trying to converge, trying to find a point or create a page, a lens through which things can be viewed, and then as opposed to keeping things free floating, let's say, right? And one last word regarding the uh, extroverted thinking versus introverted thinking, right? Introverted thinking is pure logic, it's pure mathematics, it's identity, non contradiction, and all these kinds of things. Doesn't have to do with any particular content. A is A, has nothing to do with what A is, and so on and so forth. While extroverted thinking is the logic of systems, the logic of things that actually are out there in the world, whether it be a stone or a block sliding down an inclined plane or anything that can be observed out there in the outside world, and the logic of it is typically how, let's say, someone like an extroverted thinking user like myself tends to think. um when I sound logical and rational and all that, and I'm not making logical mistakes, but typically I'm using all these types of analogies based on how things work. Okay, as opposed to if this then that, if this then that is not my comfort zone, if you will. But anyways, Dr. Thunder, well, I don't know if Kaizo, you have any kind of final thoughts on this, and we will continue, as Dr. Thunder mentioned, next week, and it will be on my channel. We'll do the final part of this. We'll look at the last few types, talk about their functional stack, and so on. Kaizo, what are your final thoughts? And then Dr. Thunder will take us out.
Yeah, I would say that once you understand your own personality type, strengths, weaknesses, and it's certain conditions, it's going to help you actually improve yourself. So people talk about investing in yourself. This is an example of that. Invest in yourself. Learn deeper about yourself. I mean, this is a model. Do with that what you may, right? But to me, from my experience, it is very useful.
It's very useful indeed. Very useful. And yeah, that we've come to the end of the road, folks. Thanks for coming through. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, become a channel member where you'll get access to all archived videos. Support Black Male Media, support independent media, super chats enabled, super thanks for the replay gang, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music. All one word, spell out the word doctor. If you'd like to buy me a sandwich, go ahead and shoot me a Cash App. Sandwich Gang. Join the Sandwich Gang. And yeah, really good conversation today. Great conversation last week too. So make sure that y'all go over and check out, like practitioner is saying right here. Go check the the number one video there, the part one of this, over on Ike's channel, and then reconvene with us next week on his channel for the third and final part to this series, which I think has been really great. And yeah, But like the video on the way out. Come back tomorrow morning for another episode of Rolling Thunder. And then tomorrow night, Two Dads React. We'll have a On the Edge of Conspiracy. We'll get our tinfoil hats out and have a good time. And then Friday morning, make sure you come and deal with the open panel Rolling Thunder, and that's going to be a nice spicy show. And that is our time. We will see you next time, next Wednesday. Looks like we're going to have a rerun on this Sunday for Case Closed. So, see y'all later. Be well.
Peace.